Good evening, dear students, teachers, and researchers. I am Japet Pentang from Western Philippines University, Puerto Princesa City, and it is my pleasure to be your facilitator for tonight's webinar series on Practical Research 1. On behalf of Beyond Books Publication, thank you so much for making yourself available. I believe that we are all excited to hear from our resource speaker regarding relevant concepts on qualitative research designs. Before we proceed, let me remind you of our online house rules. First, do not share the meeting code. Moderators will be validating the email of the participants. Second, use the same email address that you registered with us. If you will use a different email address, inform us immediately. Third, please mute your microphone during the webinar proper and turn it on during the open forum if you have a question. Be polite, do not interrupt. If you wish to speak or have any points or motion, raise your hand. The facilitator or host will recognize you and allow you to speak. Fifth, be prepared for technical difficulties. In case of technical difficulties, leave the meeting and rejoin the meeting again. Lastly, for participants who have friends that are interested to participate and weren't able to sign in the link, we are live through our YouTube channel at Beyond Books Publication and at our Facebook page at Beyond Books Publication. You may subscribe and follow. Without further ado, please sit courtesy and join us in the singing of the Makabayan song to be followed by a doxology. Thank you for that, Sir Javen. At this juncture, to deliver his opening remarks and message, let us welcome the CEO and President of Beyond Books Publication, Dr. Leonilo B. Capolso. Sir?
Good evening, everyone. Permission to share screen, sir. So once again, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our session tonight. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate and thank our speaker for tonight and our facilitator for always sharing their expertise and efforts despite their own schedules. We also would like to welcome and thank our participants from different parts of the country, from the basic education up to the higher education institution. So thank you very much for always patronizing our advocacy. So it's been our desire to promote research productivity in the countryside. And just to reiterate, in order to continue this advocacy, we are inviting you to join us in our International Research Conference in Greece, as you can see in our screen. Okay, so this will happen in September 24 to 26. This is virtual. So you are invited to submit your abstract to be part of our research presenters and maybe participants during that day. Also, we invite you also to publish with us your research outputs, may it be action research, applied research, thesis, or dissertation for a very minimal publication fee. You can also contact our regional directors that you could see in the screen. Those regional directors nearest to your area. So as mentioned, you can submit your action research, applied research, thesis and dissertation, literature review, capstone project, or even innovation. So aside from our conference, we will also be awarding Global Leaders and Educators Award. Again, this will be in Athens, Greece. Some of our awardees for our previous global awards are the ones presented there. So you have there Dr. Aleo Aberion and Sir Junaid from Barn. Okay, so they are now part of our regional coordinators and our supporters as well. So our partner for Greece is no other than Professor Rania Lampu. She is a very renowned Global Teacher Prize finalist, a STEM teacher from Athens, Greece. She'd been advocating STEM, particularly during this pandemic. Okay, so with us also is Dr. Chai Ching Tan from Ratanos Kusin International College of Creative Entrepreneurship, from Rajamang Ngala University of Technology, Rataganossi, Thailand, and with our plenary speaker from Colorado, USA, in the person of Ma'am Shinette Cunanan Gonzalez. She's actually the president of Colorado Global School. So Beyond Books Publication is now advocating around this area. We also have from India, Dr. Supriya Patak, who is our also country coordinator and a lead person of Witty Gossip International, with Dr. Andy Asrifan from Universitas Muhammadiyah, Sirindang, Rapang, Indonesia, with Dr. Ravendra Patak from Medicaps University, Dr. Mutmaina from Universitas Al-Asharia Mandar, a Faculty of Education in Indonesia. And an advance invitation also to those in this region. This is still in the process, but we are now finalizing details for those in that area from Mindanao. This is Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Mindanao, with Professor Junaid Sadang as our conference co-chair. You can also coordinate. So once again, thank you very much for always patronizing our advocacy in Beyond Books publication, particularly in this research talk. So I hope you continue to learn from our speakers. And for teachers and students who missed previous discussions that we had, as mentioned by our facilitator, Sir Japet, our very loyal author of Beyond Books publication, and our regional coordinator, you could always visit our YouTube channel for students and teachers, Beyond Books Publication TV, and our Facebook page, Beyond Books Publication. Feel free also to message our regional coordinators for all your concerns. And after this, we still have a lot of activities in store for you. We just had our CPD accreditation from United Kingdom. We are now working for our NAIAP accreditation and CPD accreditation from PRC. This is all to serve our teachers and students in basic and higher education. So once again, thank you for all your support. Let's continue to promote the culture of research towards productivity. Let's always try to keep safe. To all our coordinators in all the regions, thank you for all your support. So let's try to listen to our speaker, Sir Emel, who is very fluent and expert in his field, with the help of our moderator, Sir Japet, who has been very supportive with us. So once again, good evening, everyone, and mabuhay tayong lahat.
Thank you so much, Doc. Now, dear friends, allow me to introduce our resource speaker. Our resource speaker is a full-time assistant professor from the Faculty of Arts and Letters. He has been teaching in the University of Santo Tomas for 15 years now. He used to work as an assistant professional lecturer in Litran College, Manila, St. Scholastica's College, and De La Salle University, all in Manila. He completed his Bachelor of Science degree in Development Communication, major in Community Broadcasting from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. He finished his certification in Professional Education from the University of the Philippines in Visayas, and his Master's in Education degree, major in English as a second language from the University of the Philippines, Cebu. He also finished all his academic requirements for his Doctor of Philosophy in Language Education from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. He teaches basic grammar and composition, reading and critical thinking skills, academic writing, English communication, English research, structures of the English language, oral communication, business communication, speech communication, corporate communication, and purposive communication. His research interests include language in business, language learning, communication styles, language in education, communication, language in technology, and mediated communication. He also conducts seminars of situational leadership, public speaking, teamwork in the workplace, and workshops on communicative competence, teaching grammar, language teaching methodologies, research writing, market research, and qualitative research analysis. He serves as training consultant to Strand Asia and an on-call speaker for Bival's Publishing CPD's training all over the country. To discuss the topic on qualitative research designs, may I introduce to you our exceptional and reliable resources speaker, Assistant Professor Emel Flores Sarmago. A virtual applause for our speaker. Sir, you may now have the virtual floor.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sir Chopeth from Palawan, all the way from Palawan. It's so nice to know that we have a lot of guests or participants today. From the first one who entered the Zoom was from Marawi. Okay, mayong gabi or good evening, assalamualaikum. And I also saw friends, familiar names over there. Soon to be Dr. Patungan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Be ready for the Q&A portion if we still have time. But I guess there is none because we're running out of time. I only have 30 minutes left for my talk, and I hopefully I can finish my 100 slides prepared for you. I am very excited for tonight's talk, and I'm always very eager to share something about qualitative study, and I am very honored at the same time to share the latest or not maybe latest, but the very practical and essential elements under qualitative research design. Okay, so allow me to share my screen. Can you see my screen now, sir? Sa mga atong igsoon diha sa Cebu, na ako'y nakitaan nga nagikan sa Cebu, maayong gabi. From Luzon, of course, a lot from Luzon. There's one from Camp Sur. Oh, I missed the C. I hope you're all fine there. Sir Jopeth, can you see my my screen now?
Wala pa po,
Sir.
sir. Wala pa po.
Please make me as your co-host.
Sir Jeben, kindly help po.
Thank you. Okay, while waiting for some technological, glitch, again, well, thank you so much for coming or joining us tonight. Okay, I'm a co-host now, so I hope you can see my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, sir. Visible na po.
Okay. Yay. Okay. So again, thank you, Sir Jopeth, for reading my background. Yeah, I've been into the University of Santo Tomas. I've been teaching for 15 years now over there. The oldest university in the country, and of course, even in Asia. So today I am tasked to deliver a 1-hour lecture on qualitative research design. And I always start my discussion with memes. I love to share memes, basically because memes are honest. Memes are brutal sometimes, but memes are very insightful. So in this first meme, let's do, and I quote, let's do qualitative research. They said the analysis will be fun. They said. So a lot of people always assume qualitative research, there's a sense of inferiority when it comes to qualitative research, comparing it with quantitative, because of the essence or the subjectivity issue would come along. And always remember that there will always be issues like that, and there's no qualms or there's no quarrel about it. But there's always should be an interplay between qualitative and quantitative. Another meme from this irritating guy, Factory, Charlie and Chocolate Factory. Please tell me, oh, you did qualitative study. Please tell me all about how your feelings and intuitions guided you through the research process. So one of the factors that we need to consider when we're doing actual qualitative research is on the subjectivity, rather the objective elements of it. And this last meme, what if I told you there are research methods besides your favorite one? So to those who are really prone to make quantitative research, try qualitative once in a while, and let's see how good you are in dealing with qualitative researches as well. Okay, so today, my main objective is to refresh the memories of, I saw a lot of professors and some students also taking up research, I guess, this semester, or teachers teaching research also this semester. I would also want to share this first quote by Pope and Mace. Development of concepts which help us to understand social phenomena in natural rather than experimental settings, giving due emphasis to the meanings, experiences, and views of the participants. So if we'll get this definition from Pope and Mace, we're able to take note that qualitative researchers are very keen and very particular on meanings, experiences, and of course, the views of the respondents, or what we call research respondents. So without much further ado, I'll start my talk with the objectives. At the end of my talk, you are expected to define the nature of the 5 qualitative designs that I will be enumerating in a short while. Differentiate the characteristics of the 5 qualitative design. Determine the process in conducting the qualitative designs, and analyze the challenges of each qualitative design. So I'm highlighting the challenges as well, aside from the process of doing the qualitative design that I'll be mentioning. I'll be giving also example published research paper for each specific design. In addition to the definition I gave a while ago, we have to remember, teachers and students alike, that qualitative research design should not only account for what is said or done, but also the manner of which something is spoken or carried out by a participant. So when I have my usual discussion with fellow researchers, they would always tell me that the best person to give or to convince people to do qualitative research designs are language majors, because they say that language majors are very keen on the observation, are very keen on the description process or the description and all others necessary for qualitative research design. And I will always say that everyone, of course, will always be welcome to go and dwell into qualitative design. So these mannerisms can hold answers to questions in themselves, and body language and the tone of the voice used by respondents are also key considerations. When quantitative researchers are very keen on the numbers and the figures, here, if you want to dwell more on qualitative research, you have to be very good, you have to be very keen, even to the mannerisms, even to the gestorial, even to the posture, and even to the lulls or the parallel languages uttered by the respondents, because these might mean a lot in the conclusion or even in your discussion. So before I move on to the designs, I have to take note, I want you to highlight also that there are certain dimensions that we need to consider in dealing with qualitative designs. Number one is understanding the context. Remember that the economic, political, social, cultural, environmental, and organizational factors influence in our research output. They are very particularly significant in our understanding and even in our discussion of our research process. The dimension number two for qualitative design is to understand the people. How people make sense with their experiences in a specific situation should be well taken care of if you want to become effective qualitative designer or qualitative researcher. At the same time, we have to be very keen also on the interaction. So how the various actors and respondents evolve or involve themselves in the given realities. So observation is really keen as well. Okay, so now let's proceed with the main issue assigned by me by Beyond Books publication. And again, thank you so much for allowing me to share my insights to your well-respected professors all over the country, and for allowing me also to realize my advocacy even in this very limited or very problematic times when it comes to sharing of thoughts. Okay. So basically tonight, I will be focusing on the 5 qualitative designs used for inquiry, okay, for researchers like you and me who might be into the field without any choice, or maybe it's your choice, but we have to rely on qualitative design because it is very particularly important in our field of expertise. So I will start with the narrative, followed by phenomenology, and then the grounded theory. Then we move on to ethnography, and if we still have time, we can focus on case study. Sir Jopeth, are you there? Tell me, sir, if I'll do overtime, or tell me if I'm a bit fast, okay? So that I can slow down if there is a need. And also, please check if there are questions on the chat box so that I can address the question before I'll move on to the next. Okay, so let's begin with qualitative research design number 1. I want you to, because a lot of my friends will always come to me and tell me, what is the right way to say it? Is it methodology, or is it design, or is it approach of research? So I would want to agree that we could call them all as designs. So these 5 will be considered designs. So when we're talking about methods, we're talking about interviewing, we're talking about focus group discussion, so that it's easier for us to go through in the entire process, okay, of this speech today. So we directly call them designs. Okay, so narrative study is often the first design type that comes to mind for most people whenever they want to do research, in the sense that in narrative design, the author takes a collection of archival documents such as interviews, speeches, and other writings, and other various media like pictures, audio, and video footage to present a comprehensive study or story. From the name itself, from the etymology itself, when we're talking about narrative, we're actually dealing with storytelling. So when we do storytelling, there will be elements of storytelling. We have certain ups and downs, the resolution, the denouement, and all those elements thereof. Okay, and a lot of my friends finished PhD making use of narrative as a PhD paper, and I realized that qualitative research paper by the design called narrative could also a very reliable and a very insightful way in order to finish your doctoral degree. Okay, so never assume that whenever we have PhD degree and we ever have our master's degree, we will always dwell with the quantitative. Okay, so there must be a quantitative element in our qualitative, and we make use of mixed methods so that there will be more of objectivity element. Okay, so without quantitative anything, a lot of my friends finish their PhD using narrative kind or narrative design for qualitative study. Okay, so what are the types of the narrative study? So many of you might be familiar with this, so I'm just going to have a quick look on the types of narrative study. So it's going to be the flow. We'll start with the types, followed by the procedure or the process of dealing with it, and then move on to the challenges, and then I'll show you some picture or abstracts of the actual study published using this specific design. So it's going to be very quick. Okay, the first type of narrative study is the biographical study. This is where we write and we record the experiences of another person's life. So if it could just be one person, it could be two, it could be three, as long as they are actually in your field, in certain field of expertise that you are very familiar or that you're very keen about, and you think these people or their lives are very crucial in coming up with the understanding of your field or of the development of your field of expertise. So your contribution to the development of your knowledge is now based on the fact that you are able to narrate, you are able to take note on the ups and downs of the life of this individual who's very important, who plays a very important role in your field of expertise. So if anyone would want to go dissertation, for example, and you want to go more in education, so you can make use of the lives of certain educators in our country who played a very significant role then you can make use of that as your PhD research or even master's thesis. The second type is autoethnography. Okay, although it sounds like phenomenology or somehow, but here autoethnography, in which the writing and recording is done by subject of the study or in a journal form, just like autobiography, or just like coming up with an autobiography. So you are the one that is subjecting yourself into the actual study. So auto meaning yours, and you're sharing it to the people of your field in order for them to let you know or to let them know what are your ups and downs in lives in the development of your discipline, for example. So if Dr. Capulso or Dr. Patungan will come up with an autoethnography, he will highlight his research or voluminous pages into the understanding that his life is very important in that field, and it's able to come up with certain innovation or certain strategies, making your field of discipline or making the discipline more developed in the times. Another type of narrative studies, life history, okay, portraying one's person's entire life. So this time, it's not necessarily in the specific field of discipline, but the entire thing, or the entire from birth until the end of his or her lifetime. So it's still considered under narrative studies, because here you are coming up with a narration, or we're coming up with a narrative approach in tackling a very important person's life. A lot of PhD holders in history or in sociology may rely on this type of narrative study. And finally, oral history, more on reflections of events, their causes and effects, could still be considered under narrative study, because here we are dealing with not actually more of a written one, but more of a spoken aspect as part of the history. But of course, here, if you do come up with a paper, you have to narrate it in such a way it will be transcribed. So there will be transcription, a lot of organizational elements of the transcription, and how we discuss the issue will be done will be based according to the transcription that you're making. Okay, so what are the procedures to consider in conducting narrative research? Number one, determine if the research problem or question best fits the narrative research. So this is the very first thing that we have to approach whenever coming up with design. If narrative approach is best, then proceed. Okay, make sure that it has the certain capacity or certain ways to capture the detailed stories or life experiences of a single life or the lives of a small number of individuals. So limit your number of individuals as well. It's not everyone. Of course, you have to limit it to 3 or to 4 or 5. Once you realize that a narrative is the best design to use, select one or more individuals who have stories of life experiences to tell and spend considerable time with them, gathering their stories through multiple types of information. So if it's still, if lucky, if it's still alive, but if, of course, if it's already joined his or her creator, then there will be no more time for you to talk but you can rely more on primary data, or maybe talk from the relatives or any other people who's familiar with the individual you want to study. The third step is to collect information about the context of these stories. Narrative researchers situate individual stories with participants' personal experiences, their jobs, their homes, their culture, racial or ethnic, and their historical context, and even the time and place. So these are very important critical elements that you may include in your final paper in doing narrative research. You can also analyze the participant stories and then restory them. So the keyword for you to remember here is to restory. So remember, we are doing narration. So restory them into a framework that makes sense. Restoring is the process of reorganizing the stories into some general type of framework. So it's your choice of framework now. Since you are the author, you can come up with certain elements or certain flow or a certain outline. From what point should you begin and from what point should you end your restoring process of this important person or important persons. And finally, collaborate with participants by actively involving them in the research. Okay? As researchers collect stories, they negotiate relationships, smooth transitions, and provide ways to be useful to the participants as well. Okay, so what are the challenges in conducting narrative research? Okay, number one, it takes a keen eye to identify in the source material gathered the particular stories that capture the individual experience. So this is very important with individual's experience. You have to have a keen sense. You have to have a keen sense of understanding the details, taking note into certain aspects of the history, of the life, of the processes going on into the individual's experiences. Another challenge that you might encounter in doing narrative research is that active collaboration with participant is necessary, and researchers need to discuss the participant story. So there is ideally an active collaboration. So if the participant or if the actual individual will not participate, if he or she will be still living, then there could be problem later on in the final output. Okay. And multiple issues arise in the collecting, analyzing, and telling of individual stories. Okay, so always remember, maybe that's one factor that we need to consider also as qualitative researcher, the way we interpret, the way we come up with certain ideas or certain data that we collected through the process might also be a factor that or there might be some issue like our biases, for example, our sense of understanding on the realities of this person or this individual, and so on and so forth. It could even be the principles that we hold true and the principles that the person might hold true might be contradictory. So you have to take note that this is also a challenge. Okay. So as much as possible in the reality that there might be subjectivity involved here, we have to try hard. And this is always I tell every time I do as a resource speaker for qualitative researcher, we have to do our very best to be subjective, to be objective still in dealing or in doing the process. Here's some experience, some example of narrative study. A very good friend of mine, Alan B. de Guzman, came up with a very interesting narrative, biographical, Filipino teachers' experience and supportive relationship with colleagues. So a select number, actually it's very interesting because there are 50 actually public respondents in this paper. Quite lengthy, yeah, it's quite lengthy because there's 50, but yeah, you can go beyond that if you have ample time to come up with 50. But always remember, the lesser the better, because narrative biographical inquiry will require a lot of descriptions, will require a lot of written illustrations or somehow descriptors to come up with an actual paper with the matter. Another one is a narrative inquiry of one female married single, a story of loneliness and isolation. Yes, this is a published a narrative qualitative research paper taking into the life of a certain one female married single as a narrative approach towards qualitative study. Okay, so it could be 50, it could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3 for that matter, as long as it's manageable enough for you to consider. Okay, if you have a question, sir? Sir Japeth, are you still there?
Yes, sir. We do not have any queries for
Oh, wala
now.
pa.
You may proceed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's now proceed with the research design number 2, which is phenomenology. Okay, so when we're talking about phenomenology, we're talking about phenomenon. Okay, I love the keyword phenomenon. So your first step should be to take this word apart. Phenomenon refers to an occurrence of experience. Logical refers to a path towards understanding. So the keyword for you to highlight here in phenomenology is to take note on certain lived experiences. I love it when we refer phenomenology as a study on the lived experiences of our target group or of our target respondents, highlighting the logical way in our logical path towards understanding the certain group of people or a certain person or individuals in that specific phenomenon or state of being. So the reactions, perceptions, and feelings of an individual or group of individuals as he or she experience an event will always be the key factor that we need to consider in adhering to design number 2 called phenomenology. So what are the types of phenomenology? So there are basically 2 types. We have the hermeneutic, and the other one is the psychological phenomenology. So Van Manen in 1990 took note into the hermeneutic, while Mustakas highlight the psychological phenomenology. So basically, as the name implies, it will always be referred to a certain select disciplinal approach in coming up with discipline or what do you call this? Understanding of the types of phenomenology. Van Manen is an educator, therefore he is very keen on the understanding of hermeneutical phenomenology, in which he describes research as oriented toward lived experience and interpreting the texts of life. Okay, so the texts of life not necessarily mean language related, but it could be other factors. Okay, it could be other factors related to the lived experiences. Mustakas, on the other hand, knowing for a fact that into the field of psychology, took into account the transcendental or the psychological phenomenology, which is focused less on interpretations of the researcher and more on a description of the experiences of participants. So here, Mustakas will highlight less of the subjective element of the qualitative approach of this design. So he, as much as possible, will take note on some descriptive, okay, or just the researcher will take note on or will describe the experiences of the participant in that state of being. So what are the procedures for conducting phenomenology? The researcher determines if the research problem is best examined using phenomenological approach. So the same thing, we have to have a clear sense of discernment. So that's the thing about qualitative researchers. You have to discern, you have to critically evaluate if this design really is the best approach to use in dealing with your research problem, okay, or your research problematic. The type of problem best suited for this form of research is one in which it is important to understand several individuals' common or shared experiences of a certain phenomenon. So in this time or in this trying times of COVID, like the pandemic, for example, if you want to come up with a research on COVID-19 and how we Filipinos and Filipinos too much, so we specifically determined it for educators, for example, undergoing such a predicament will be a best factor to consider if you want to go phenomenology. Number two, procedure, a phenomenon of interest to study such as anger, okay, professionalism, what it means to be underweight, or what it means to be a wrestler must be identified. Okay, so it is your keen sense of understanding or identifying a certain phenomenon that you want to study. And then when you get this, take into account certain concepts, read more about it, and then we could come up with phenomenology as the best design. The third procedure is the researcher recognizes and specifies the broad philosophical assumptions of the phenomenology. So here we have to deal with your understanding on the underlying elements under the phenomenon that you want to study, highlighting on the philosophy, for example, and what specific facet or understanding of the certain phenomenon that you want to share or that you want to dwell more in your research approach or your research study. Or data are collected, or fourth step is data are collected from the individuals who have experienced the phenomenon. Often, data collection is phenomenological. In phenomenological studies, consists of in-depth interviews and multiple interviews with participants. Okay, so always remember, if you want to become very good qualitative researchers, you have to have a very good skill also in interviewing. Okay, you also have to have a very good skill in coming up with, presenting the questions one at a time and evaluating the types of questions that you need to ask for a select number of participants. And number 5, the participants are asked broad general questions. What have you experienced in terms of phenomenon? What are the contexts of the situation that typically influence or affected you or experiences of that phenomenon, and so on and so forth. So depending on your objectives or your research objectives, you're able to come up into terms on the possibility of enumerating possible questions to elicit responses from your subjects and to come up with a very reliable, conclusive evidence later on. So therefore, once you collected the data, those what we call phenomenological data will be analyzed, okay? And it should be dealt with certain steps that are generally similar for all psychological phenomenologists who discuss the methods according to Mustakas 1994 and Pollinghorne 1989. So if you want to know more on how to analyze data using phenomenological approach, we have to read the work of Mustakas in 1994 and Pollinghorne in 1989, because it varies according to the certain philosophical or even the psychological element that you are going to deal with. Number 7, these significant statements and themes are then used to write description of what the participants experience as this textual, okay, description. They are also used to write description of the context or setting that influence how the participants experience the phenomenon, called imaginative variation or structural description. So this is going to be very technical. There are a lot of technical terms here, but here, all you got to do is to analyze, to take note that in the analysis process, you are always dealing with description. That is why when you're when you are a teacher and your advisee, for example, like my advisee will tell me descriptive qualitative research. So I assume always that there might be a phenomenological aspect dealing with this research study. They might not be familiar with it, but it is our job now to let them inform or let them be familiar with the concept of phenomenology as an approach towards qualitative researchers or research. Step number 7, researchers also write about their own experiences and the context and the situations that have influenced their experiences and reflect these personal statements at the beginning of the phenomenology or include them in the methods discussion of the role of the researcher. So you have to share this and you have to show it. It's all right. So yeah, there might be subjectivity involved there, but again, we have to be objective as much as possible in our dealings, in our presenting or in the presentation of our data or gathered information. Okay, and do this, and you have to mention this in the methods section. Okay, maybe form of limitation or form of scope and caveats and so on and so forth. Okay, now what are the number 8? From the structural and textual descriptions, the researcher then writes a composite description that presents the essence of the phenomenon called the essential invariant structure, or the essence. So this is now what we call the more objective you get as a researcher, the more understandably less bias your final output may be. Okay, and here it is now your obligation to take note on what are these essential invariant structure, or what we call essence, to realize that your paper is always contributing to the existing knowledge of the concept or the phenomenon that you want to dwell or that you want to analyze. Okay, so what are the challenges? Okay, let's now move on to the challenges. Challenges in conducting phenomenology. A phenomenology provides a deep understanding of a phenomenon as experienced by several individuals. Knowing some common experiences can be valuable for groups such as therapists, teachers, personnel, and even policymakers. Therefore, if you might be studying, or you come up with a phenomenology that is outside your field of discipline, that might create a big deal of challenge for you. Okay, because you might not be familiar with the rigors of the job or the biases of the discipline, and so on and so forth. Phenomenology can involve a streamlined form of data collection by including only single or multiple interviews with participants. So generally, it has to be a challenge for you to choose, okay, to choose or to streamline or to come up with a great deal of a very objective way of what information will be included and what certain observations will be included in your final report or in your final paper later on. So streamlining might be very, very common as a form of a challenge. And of course, phenomenology requires at least some understanding of the broader philosophical assumptions, and these should be identified by the researcher. So you, as the researcher, if you are not really in the full grasp of the philosophical nature of, or the philosophical assumption of the concept or the phenomenon that you want to study, you might find it very, very problematic later on. Okay, so you have to be equipped, you have to be ready, and you have to be fully aware of the circumstances that lies beyond the phenomenon that you want to study. Therefore, the participants in the study need to be carefully chosen to be individuals who have all experienced the phenomenon in question, so that the researcher, in the end, can forge a common understanding. Okay, so even the choosing process is very significant. Okay, although later on you can still have ample time to let go of those you think participants that might not be really the best participant to be included in the phenomenology study. But again, it might be a total waste of time when you spent a lot of time already or interviews already with all these participants, and then later on he can or she can be discarded in that specific group of the matter. So choosing is a challenge, of course, and you have to have a very good sense of understanding on who are the best participants to be part of your phenomenological project. Here are some of the example internationally published journals highlighting phenomenological as their study. I'll just highlight on the title because I know I have very limited time. The Need to Transcend, a Phenomenological Study on the Lived Experiences of Millennial Teachers. So here, of course, the study of the authors highlighted here took note into the important role of the millennial teachers. Okay, I love the term millennial teachers. It's a very good phenomenological study because knowing for a fact that we have this common notion about millennials, are the millennial teachers like that, and so on and so forth. Another topic, or another study published, Educators Behind Bars, Phenomenology of the Lived Experiences of Teachers in San Ramon Penal Farm. Okay, so basically when you're talking about this, so this would create an assumption that we are focusing on teachers, okay, on a penal farm somewhere in, where's this place? San Ramon. Where's San Ramon? Zamboanga here, somewhere. I don't know if it's Zamboanga. Okay, so interestingly enough, kasi pag may phenomenology, yung mga titles, ito yung mga observation ko din sa mga titles, pag Filipinos ang gumagawa ng research paper, meron na silang phenomenology, meron pa silang lived experiences. So there might be a sense of redundancy, but maybe just more on the reality that phenomenology will always deal with the lived experiences, okay, of the subject that you're going to deal with. Okay, now let's move on to qualitative research design. Okay, and this is
Time check,
design.
Doc. Prof.
Time check. Yes,
It's already 7:03 na po.
7:03. So I have to
Yes, sir.
stop until grounded theory, so I cannot finish my talk. Anyway,
You may sum up it po, sir.
okay. So anyway, since I only have I only have 30 minutes for my talk, sayang, but we have a question actually here. Okay. Ramadan, sayang, Ma'am Rachel.
Pero siguro pwede po yung tuloy, basta po ano na lang siguro, medyo pabilis na lang po ng konti po. Okay lang po, tuloy na lang po natin, Doc.
Ano, kasi, okay, sige. Tuloy na lang natin. Kakayanin natin ito. Okay, so grounded theory. Pag sinasabing grounded theory, we're talking about, the keyword is emergent. Okay, so when you do emergent, when we take into account emergent as a factor to reckon with in doing research, qualitative research, we are creating, okay? We are creating a certain approach of which we could deal with a certain theory, but you cannot come up with a theory without analyzing, okay, the grassroots or the emergent or the emerging the elements that we need to check first, okay? So the ground theory is very challenging. It's very difficult. I'm going to tell you that although I am not discouraging you to do grounded theory, but grounded theory is a good design when the theory is not available yet to explain the process. So always take note of that. So so when you have grounded theory, or when you use grounded theory, there might be a need for you, okay, to be very original in coming up with this hypothesis or this educated guess or the theoretical grounding of that specific understanding of the field that you belong. Okay, so here's the elements that we need to consider. Okay. And here, for grounded theory, you have to be very good at coding. Okay, so because the data that you need to come up or that you're able to get in the study should be coded properly. Okay. In addition to all the necessary categories that you make and all the necessary explanation per category, the coding should be very systematic. If you fail to code the concepts that emerged in the actual study, then there might be problem later on in the conduct of your grounded theory. Okay, so here are some of the challenges. So I'll just proceed. Okay, it's bad. Okay, we have no more time. In grounded theory, the investigator needs to set aside as much as possible theoretical ideas or notions that the analytic substantive theory can emerge. So we have to let the results speak for itself, okay? You cannot have a biased understanding or a biased possible reinterpretation of the results that you're able to gather. You have to make sure that it's very much based on the one that is actually the result of the data gathering or the analysis of the information that you gathered by your respondents and so on and so forth, okay? Another challenge here, the researcher faces the difficulty of determining when categories are saturated on the theory is sufficiently detailed. Okay, so this is going to be very problematic also. When you say saturation, no more na, wala ka ng respondent to give you another idea. So you have to determine when will that end. Because if you think there is more, you have to look for more. Okay, if it's not yet saturated. So this is an example study on grounded theory. This too shall pass, a grounded theory study of Filipino cancer survivorship, for example. So here, highlighting the cancer survivors as the main respondents or the main or the people that we need to consider in the study, we are now able to conceptualize the process of cancer survivorship among Filipinos. So here in this case, 27 Filipino cancer survivors were purposively selected. So it's purposive selection or purposive sampling is done. And then through here, they were able to come up with a certain model, okay? The certain model coming up with the certain stages, okay? On the levels of certain Filipinos who are what we call cancer survivors. Another grounded theory of study of student perceptions on instructor presence in online classes is also very, very interesting study on grounded theory, highlighting student perceptions of instructors' presence in online classes, which is also very, very timely as of the moment. We can actually come up with another study on this. And lastly, a grounded theory of Filipino wellness or kaginhawaan. So here, Maria Cristina Samaco Zamora and Karina Therese Galang Fernandez came up with a very good theoretical underpinnings of what wellness is or kaginhawaan in the Filipino setting. That's a very interesting study. If you want to read that study, it's a very interesting. Research design number 4, ethnography. Okay, of course, for sociology and anthropology major, ethnography is a very familiar one. Ethnography focuses on meaning largely through direct field observation. Okay, so you have to situate yourself into the actual field. So this is now what we call, you are putting yourself into a certain culture. You are opening your mind to the realities of the real world. Okay, so you have to experience it yourself. And sometimes in certain cases, ethnographers are not actually telling the people that is actually observing, but it's more on it's covert ethnography, and there's also overt ethnography for that matter. Okay, there are certain types, the realist ethnographers, okay, and there are also critical ethnographers, or critical ethnography. So here, emancipation of groups. So critical ethnography, this is a very, that's why it's called critical ethnography, because the issues here are highly power based on hegemony or power struggle, or there is an element of problems in dealing with a society. So the other one, critical ethnography, is more of a very much problem, while the other one is more of an observatory on the general flow of what's going on in a certain community. So here's the procedure, determining first if it's the best one. Number 2, locate a culture sharing group of the study. That's very important. Location, location, location. So that you have to take care of your safety. You have to take care of the availability of the things that you need in order to survive. And the danger, of course, that you have to take note also. The themes, okay, that you have to consider, okay, should be analyzed accordingly. And then you have to have the cultural concepts, highlighting hegemony or what is the status quo. And then, of course, you have to gather information, and you can come up with field work, of course. That's the essential elements for ethnographers. And then it's very important challenge or procedure here is to forge a working set of rules or patterns as the final product of this analysis. The final product is a cultural portrait. So some ethnographers will create an illustration or a framework or a certain way of approach on how these people survive in a given situation or a given scenario or a given problem existing in that given society. So what are the challenges? You have to have a grounding of cultural anthropology. That's a very essential element there. Collecting data is very extensive, so you have to be ready with your budget. The possibility that you will go native, I hope it will not happen to you, meaning you're not able to complete the study because you fell in love with the culture. You fell in love with the studied with the studied locale, and you don't want to dwell anymore. Okay, that's also one struggle there. Here are some of the examples of ethnographic studies. An ethnographic study on Maranao school children in Sorsogon. So Maranao, but they're in Sorsogon. So very, very ethnographic approach in dealing with it. This is a very good example of ethnographic study on friendship group of same-sex attracted middle-class young men from Metro Manila in the Philippines. So here, when you do ethnographic study, you have to be very precise. You have to be very specific on the respondents that you have in mind. This is a very interesting study. If you really would want to go ethnographic study, I want you to read this study by Ronald McDonald, especially when if you're with gender, if you're with sociology and gender issues, you go to dwell with that research. And finally, case study. Okay, last case studies and in-depth analysis of people, events, and relationships bounded by some unifying factor. Okay, the keyword there, bounded. Okay, so here are the types: the single instrumental case study, the collective or multiple, and the intrinsic study. I'm not going to dwell more on the types. Let's have the procedure. Again, determine if case study is the best one. And case study is a good approach when the inquirer has clearly, take note, clearly identifiable cases or have identifiable cases with the boundaries and seeks to provide an in-depth understanding of the cases or a comparison of several cases. In our field of linguistics or in our language field, we really love to do case studies. We really love to do the linguistic the attributes, the linguistic attributes of certain people. Like in my expertise, I would really go into media, the role of media in certain group of people, or the role of social media, for example, in the group of young people, and so on and so forth. So the boundary should be set. That's why we have to take note of that when we do case studies. So it could be several individuals, a program, even an event or an activity can be studied under case study. The data collection in case study research is typically extensive. So this is also a very, very tasking kind of job. Drawing of multiple sources of information, such as observations, interviews, document analysis, content analysis, audiovisual materials, and so on and so forth will be done in case study approach. And in the final interpretive phase, the researcher reports the meaning of the case, whether the meaning comes from learning about the issue of the case or instrumental case, or learning about an unusual situation, or what we call an intrinsic case. Okay. Another one. Challenges inherent to qualitative case study development is that researcher must identify his or her case. If you fail to identify what is the elements of this case, then that's going to be very problematic. Qualitative case study development is that researcher must identify his or her case and consider whether to study a single case or multiple case. So it's your choice really when you do with case study. And given the time frame, when you submit your paper for publication, for example, you have to make sure that it's manageable. Okay. In this example study, a case study of pedagogical content knowledge and faculty development in the Philippines by Ed Vandenberg is a very interesting study on the role of pedagogical content knowledge in the Philippines setting. And another one is advancing the K-12 reform from the ground, a case study in the Philippines as well. This is published by ADB, Sustainable Development Working Series Papers. So in conclusion, are you still there, Sir Chapet?
Yes, sir, we are. Go ahead.
Check. Wala pang time, okay pa? So in conclusion, aside from the fact that we have to be very knowledgeable on the designs, it is also, we have to take note also on some important concepts in designing qualitative research. Number one, make sure that the participants are free from any control and the data collected in their natural environment. Okay, they should not be overpowered by your presence. They should not should not have the halo effect. Okay, and you should not give them a critical factor that might change. Okay, might change the actual supposed to be outcome of your paper or your research paper. Another aspect is holism. Remember that the whole is more than the sum and take the magnitude of contextual factors into account. So elements like this, you have to have a clear sense on the generalization or the general approach in coming up with the specific elements. Another important aspect before coming up with a conclusion is that human as a research instrument. So always take note that researchers are involved in every step, being responsive, flexible, adaptive, and observant if you want to dwell with all these research designs. Emergent design also, note that the study design emerges as further insights are gained through the data collection and analysis. So there is still a possibility that there might be another design that would come along and would share with the other design in order for you to get into the real flow of what is your research paper is all about. And finally, saturation or redundancy. Be mindful of the stage where additional interview or observation is not believed to add new information. Know when enough is enough. That is a very, very critical factor that we need to consider as qualitative research. Okay, I have here a table. Okay, I'm just going to show this here. And if you want to have this paper, I will be forwarding all my PowerPoint presentation through the group or to the organizers for this class. Here are my references, sources for the memes. And remember, all research ultimately has a qualitative grounding. Okay, that is why never underestimate the important role of qualitative research in our lives as researchers. And lastly, quantitative, dehumanizing research methods, a qualitative, human-centered approach. Therefore, your life is not a task of chore, but the endless discovery and expression of your true and essential nature. And if you want to become good qualitative researchers, we have to take note of this adage or quote to live by. Thank you so much for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay updated. Okay, thanks so much for that.
Wow, so very informative discussion from our professor here. So we hope to have you again someday, Sir Emil, for another
Yes.
session. We believe that nabitin yung mga
You're welcome.
participants.
I guess this is my last chance. This is my last. This is my last talk because Dr. Patungan was the one who invited me or joined or asked me to join, and I'm very grateful again to Beyond Books Publication for giving me the opportunity to speak to your audiences all over the country. And this is one way of sharing also my advocacy to encourage researchers to do more qualitative research. Dr. Patungan is more of quantitative. I am more of qualitative. Dr. Patungan, are you still there? Okay, thank you so much. Okay.
Yes, sir. We are so glad that you're so very generous in sharing your time and experiences with us. So thank you so much for that, Prof. Emil. And for now, before we proceed with the question and answer portion, let me first appreciate the presence of our various participants from the different institutions around the country. So we have Mindanao State University Main Campus, Central Bicol State University of Agriculture, Western Philippines University, Philippine State College of Aeronautics, Rizal Medical Center, Pasig City, Laguna State Polytechnic University, Los Baños Campus, Cotabato Foundation College of Science and Technology, Dr. Pablito V. Mendoza Senior High School, University of Anteque, Central Zone State University, Negros Oriental State University, Tarlac Agricultural University, San Matias National High School, Ligao National High School, Bicol Region, University of Northern Philippines, Bigan City, CMG University, Library Department and Info Science, India, San Antonio National High School, Davao Oriental Regional Science High School. Also, we have friends from Hulusulu, PSHM CTU Barili, Palawan, Cagayan de Oro City, Binangonan Rizal, Malaybalay City, Pangasinan, Isabela City, Camarines Sur, and lastly, we have Masbate, Bicol. So thank you for joining us. And we have here several questions for our dear resource speaker to address. So I'm very sure that he is very ready to answer. So first, sir, we have here from...
Yes, Dr. Patungan with me.
Yeah.
Dr. Patungan, can you show yourself?
So, sir, first we have here from Patrick Isla. So, ang tanong po niya, hello po, if I may ask, if I have a phenomenological investigation type of research design, what is the minimum number of respondents po?
Yeah, as what I've said a while ago, a phenomenological approach of study, you have to make sure that these people are undergoing the same phenomenon. Okay, so that's the basic element. So if there are 3 people only or 5 people which you think are the best people to saturate your research, then that 5 person will be enough. Okay, or if you have 50, just like in some of the studies I've read about phenomenology, then 50 will be fine. Just make sure that you have ample time, because the more respondents or the more people that you involve with in your study, the greater the possibility for you to have more time dealing with them. Okay? So it's up to you. It's really up to you. Oh, Dr. Patungan is there na. Guwapo naman ang picture. Show yourself, Doctor. Sir, hindi kita nakita, sir. Yung noo mo lang nakita mo. Taas ng konti. Thank you, Sir Patrick. Okay.
Ayan.
May comments si Sir Patrick.
So we hope that we answered the question.
Yes.
We have another question, sir. So from Diosco Comedia. So according from here, is it possible to conduct grounded research design even if there is correlation in my study?
Oh, yeah, but you're dealing with ano na, mixed method na siya. Okay, so that's very, very common. In doing mixed method, you can proceed with grounded theory, and then there's correlational, then it can be done, of course. Okay, but in my case, in this lecture today, I would really want to encourage researchers to just really focus on qualitative, okay? Because we have to show the world that qualitative researchers are worthy, okay? Are worthy researchers. They're amazing researchers as well that that can significantly contribute to the knowledge of the discipline. Yeah, but yeah, I agree with you. You can do that, but it's going to be more of a mixed method already, not strictly qualitative. Next question, sir, if there's any.
So we have here another question from Sir Ron Louis de los Reyes. So here it is. How will you prove to your panel that you did not tamper with the result of your respondents? And while talking to your respondents, is it advisable to video record the interview, or you could just give them a questionnaire and just let them answer it and just ask for their signature just to show that the interview really happened?
Yes, correct. That's the essence of being qualitative researchers. We don't rely much with surveying because as much as possible, we have to be present. We have to be there the moment we give the questions. Because as what I highlighted a while ago, even the mannerisms, the facial expressions, the posture, and the verbal elements can be a factor to consider in the analysis of the results later on. Okay, so take note of that. Okay, and how will you convince? Just be truthful. Okay, and you can show proof. You can video yourself, or you can have the actual video and show it to your panelists that you are doing the video and you are not tampering and you are actually doing the material. And usually you can append it, the transcripts of your interview portion, you can append it into as part of your research paper so that they can really, or it can really show that you are doing what is supposed to be done correctly in that specific qualitative research discipline. Hope I answered your question. Okay.
Thank you for that, Sir Emil, for your answers regarding the questions and concerns of our participants. I hope there's no more. So let me reiterate again that the evaluation link will be posted soon, and please make sure to enter a valid email address. So to give appreciation to the generosity of our resource speaker for tonight, certificate of appreciation will be provided. So may I have the assistance of the IT to present the certificate? So let me read the content of the certificate. Certificate of recognition is presented to Emilito F. Sarmago for being the resource speaker during the Beyond Books publication research talks for Practical Research 1 with the topic Qualitative Research Designs via Zoom, given this 7th day of May 2021, and is hereby signed by our CEO, President Leonilo B. Caposo. Once again, sir, maraming salamat po.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much, Dr. Capuzzo, for inviting me and Beyond Books publication.
Thank you once again for that, and a big thanks also to Beyond Books publication, especially through the leadership of Dr. Leonilo B. Capuzzo for this opportunity, not only for senior high school students and teachers, but for anyone that has a love or passion for research. So before we end, may I request everyone to kindly please turn on their cameras so that we can have our photo opportunity to be facilitated by our ITs.
You're welcome, ma'am. Maria Teresa, Dr. Calapis. Thank you.
Sir Jeben, you may now take charge.
Thank you, Sir Ron, Louis.
Okay, everyone, may I request everyone to please open your camera. And in the count of three, I want everyone to smile. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, continue smiling because we have three page. We have 75 participants. So can may I ask everyone to please open your camera again? Next page, everybody smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay, for our last page, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much. Stay safe, everyone, and God bless you all.
To those who are joining us through FB Live and YouTube Live, the evaluation link was posted in the comment section, so you may refer to that. I want to reiterate that please make sure that you will enter a valid email address so that you will receive a certificate of participation. So before we end, let's have Dr. Eugel Santiago for a closing remark. Sir?
Okay, so magandang gabi po. Narinig po ba ako, Sir Jupet?
Yes, sir. Loud and
Ayan, so muli, isang mapagpalang gabi po sa ating lahat. So in behalf of Beyond Books Publications, so I would like not to extend my deepest gratitude for those actually who are involved no in this program no for this session. So of course no, unang higit sa lahat nagpapasalamat tayo sa Panginoong Diyos no na siyang palagi nagbibigay ng lakas sa atin no para ipagpatuloy itong ganitong mga gawain natin no para makapaglingkod at makapagbigay kaalaman sa iba. Of course no, to our CEO President, ang ating ama na sa Beyond Books Publication, Dr. Lenilo B. Capulso, no, para sa paggabay na sa bawat isa sa atin no for always taking the lead no dito sa ating mga programs. So, sir, thank you po. Of course to our program chairman Dr. Maria Teresita Calapis no na actually talagang pangalawa kay Sir Leonilo no na talagang naniniguro na magkakaroon tayo ng maayos na flow dito sa ating program. Maraming salamat po. Of course to our speaker for this evening, Dr. Emilito Sarmago. Thank you very much for your very informative talk no this evening. Sir Emilito, meron po akong favor sa inyo.
Sure, ano yan?
Actually, sir, no first, paano ko lang to. Pero nung una ko kasi kayo narinig po na, na nagbigay ng talk doon sa isa po yata sa 3i. Actually, I was amazed sa projection po, no, sa pag-project nyo po ng pagtutok. Baka po pwede with the permission of Dr. Lenilo, baka po pwedeng minsan makapagbahagi po kayo ng tips, no, sa public speaking kasi napaka well modulated po ng inyong boses.
Sure, no problem, no problem.
Opo, thank you very much po. Opo.
Let's schedule that.
Okay, thank you very much, Doc. Of course, to our facilitator, very energetic, Sir Jupet. Maraming salamat po sa atin pong technical, of course, ating technical assistance group, no, sa kay Sir Jaben, kay Ma'am Myra, and of course kay Ma'am Maria Yvette. Maraming salamat din po, no. Sa lahat po ng technical working group members, isang maraming salamat din po, and of course no sa lahat po ng ating mga participants no na walang sawang sumubaybay mula simula po no hanggang sa mga darating pa po na mga research talks po natin at nakakatuwa po personally na tayo ay nasa second quarter na po no. Yung ating pong 3i I think parang sa next Wednesday ay parang huling session na po no. Tayo rin po ay patuloy pa rin po pero ganun pa man nakakatuwa po kasi ito pong ating mga ginagawa po na research talks ay sobra po nakakatulong sa mga teachers no and as well sa mga estudyante po natin. Actually kanina nakakita pa nga po ako na naka-open camera na nagti-take down notes. Kaya po talagang very thankful ako personally kasi mayroon po tayong mga ganito pong initiatives. So sana po no since nasimulan po natin ito ay wag po sana tayo magsawang sumubaybay po no sa mga darating pa po nating research talks and at the same time sa mga parating pa po na programa po natin. Ang kung di po ako nagkakamali, may nakahanda na po ulit tayo na research talks po, no? After nitong PR1 tsaka po after ng ating 3 eyes po. Kaya abangan po natin yon kung paano po nating sinubaybayan at sinuportahan itong PR1 and 3 eyes research talk sessions natin. Sana po ay ganun din po nating suportahan ang mga parating pa po na research talks and at the same time mga programa po ng Beyond Books Publication. And siguro po napakaganda rin na kung tayo ay natututo, yung ating pong natututunan ay ibahagi din po natin sa iba. No? So we are looking forward na tayo pong lahat ay mga magiging research advocates, no? At actually ito ang ating simula para magawa po natin ang panawagan ng research, no? Na maging advocacy natin ito since napakalaking tulong po nito sa pang-araw-araw na pamumuhay ng bawat tao. So once again, isang mapagpalang gabi at maraming salamat po sa ating lahat. So to God be the glory. Ayun. So next po, so gusto po namin kayong actually no i-encourage na tayo po ay tumangkilik sa ating mga libro na mayroon po tayo sa ating library. Sir Jben, pwede po bang pa-flash po tayo ng mga books that are available na on our library? Na sa tingin ko po ay talaga sobra po makakatulong sa atin, no, sa paggawa po ng ating research, mapa-quantitative, mapa-qualitative po, no. Meron po ba tayo, Sir Jben, ng ating po mga books po para at least makita rin po ng ating mga viewers, ng ating mga researchers, teachers, students as well? Marami po kaming may offer po sa inyo na siyang magagamit po natin, no, sa paggawa po ng ating research papers. So first we have, ayan, so inquiries, investigations, and immersions or yung ating 3 eyes. And at the same time, no, we are very proud to say na yung ating mga authors ay siya rin pong mga speakers po natin, no, dito po sa mga research talks na ating pong ginagawa. Next po. We also have and how to write and publish your dissertation for those who are taking their doctorate degree, yung mga nasa dissertation na po. And as well as para po sa mga nasa masterate degree, how to write your thesis. Next, ito sa mga co-educators po natin dito, no? Since we are encouraged, no, by the Department of Education to do an action research, no, na talaga namang tutukoy sa mga pangunahing pangangailangan ng sektor ng edukasyon, no? Ito po, magagamit po natin how to conduct, no, action research in education. Next po. We also have, yan, research methodology for quantitative and qualitative research. Ang pasikot-sikot po ng research ay matututunan po natin sa pamagitan po ng libro na ito. Next po. We also have practical research to quantitative research. Yan po sa mga students po natin dito, no? Gagamit po natin ito. Okay po. Next po. Yan. So para po, no, sa mga mayroong gusto, no, na ma-publish, no, at actually makita at mabasa, no, worldwide, no, yung ating mga articles, no, you may publish, no, your papers through our IJAMS or International Journal of Advanced Multidisciplinary Studies. We have here volume 1, issue number 1 and issue number 2. So be part of issue number 3. Kaya ano pa pong hinihintay natin? Huwag na po tayo magpatumpik-tumpik pa. At maaari po tayo makipag-ugnayan sa mga sumusunod, no, para po ma-publish ang atin pong mga talaga namang pinaghihirapan na mga research papers, no. At least magkaroon ng napakaganda pong kalalabasan. You can call or actually, no, you can call our associate editor, Sir Joel De La Cruz. Also, you may contact our managing editor and at the same time our PR1 session chairman, Dr. Maria Teresita G. Calapis. You may also, no, contact Dr. Myra G. Flores and at the same time Sir Jben Locsion, our IT experts here. Okay? Pa po tayo. So submit your articles for volume 1, issue number 3. And at the same time, of course, no, you may also contact our regional directors, no, yung mga BBP members, and especially our editor-in-chief, Dr. Leonilo B. Capulso. Submit your articles, no, Beyond Books Publication 2018 at gmail.com. Sir, pabalik po ako ng contact number po. You may also contact 0933-556-4886. Okay po, next po. So na-miss nyo po ba ang ating ginanap na International Multidisciplinary Research Conference last April? So magkakaroon po ulit tayo, no? At kayo po ay malugod naming iniimbitahan sa darating na International Multidisciplinary Research Conference, no? Na gaganapin sa Athens, Greece, no? It's a collaboration, no, of Philippines and Athens, Greece, no? This coming September 2021. We also have Global Leaders and Educators Awards. So actually, you may submit your abstract, you may submit your nominations, no, sa atin pong mga regional directors, you may contact them, sa atin pong mga members, and at the same time po, no, sa atin pong editor-in-chief, no, sa atin pong CEO President, Dr. Leonilo B. Capulso. So see you on Athens, Greece this coming September. And siguro po lastly, no, sa mga nagnanais pa po na maging members po or maging member po ng atin pong grupo, no, since ang atin pong sabi nga, pinapalawak po natin ang atin pong pamilya, no, pinaparami po natin ang ating pamilya, maging member po sana kayo, no, ng amin pong Beyond Books Publication team, no. Mayroon na po tayong mga designated regional directors, although sa iba pong area ay wala pa po, no, pero mayroon na po tayong mga designated regional directors sa iba pong region, kaya po sana po ay tumugon po kayo sa aming panawagan na maging member po ng amin pong grupo para po at least ay lalo pa pong lumawak at dumami ang ating kaalaman, hindi lamang sa research, no, kundi sa iba't iba pa pong larangan po. So yun lang po. Maraming salamat. Alam ko po pagod na po tayo at Biyernes po ngayon, pero lagi ko po sinasabi, wag po sana tayong mapagod na matulog. At ito po ay sabi natin ay ginagawa natin para sa kabutihan ng lahat. Okay, so thank you and good evening. God bless.
Thank you, Doc Rio, for that address. Once again, thank you, Prof. Emil, for the challenge to embrace qualitative research design, and also to everyone for actively joining us tonight. So once again, stay safe and God bless. Have a good night. Maraming salamat po and hope to see you again in our next research talks. We will now leave the meeting room po. So Sir Jeben, you may play the videos po, our promotional videos for the meantime. Salamat po.